attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the May edition of Third Tuesday Conversation, or as Lyle and I have decided, the season finale of the 2017 program year. I'm Danica Olson, and we're glad that you...
And I guess I'm Lyle Griner, right?
Yes, absolutely. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. And if you're joining us for, the millionth time, welcome. We're chatting with Lyle Griner today, and we're going to be talking about the Netflix original series, 13 Reasons Why, but also how to lead and have conversations with our kids and families about not only this Netflix series, but about teen suicide. So thanks for being with us, Lyle.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I got my coffee. It's officially a kind of a coffee house deal, right?
Heck yeah. Virtual cafe we're hanging out in. So if you haven't joined us, or if, just as a reminder, if it's been a while, you can submit your questions and comments to the box on the right-hand side of your screen, or we'd love if you'd join us in live tweeting using the hashtag 3TC. So before we jump into the Netflix series, Lyle, tell us, we discussed that the last time you were with us, you talked about grief, and yes, I promise that Lyle talks about other things than, not just sad topics.
They give me all the very joyous conversation pieces, yes. So.
Well, tell us a little bit about you, Lyle, and about your ministry, and maybe
sure.
Tell us about this picture that you've got here.
Oh, what picture do I have up? I don't see it.
Oh, sorry, the mental health issue of the Connect Journal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for some reason I don't have the visuals, but yeah, they asked me to write for that last time, especially around how do kids make a difference in the lives of other kids, and I think they greatly do.
Yeah.
They are often the very front lines of care. And so I'll get to chat about that. So yeah, my world, you asked about that a little bit. I'm guessing a lot of people know, but I work as the National Director for Peer Ministry Leadership. It has been my passion for a lot of years, and I still love it. It is a way of giving kids caring skills, welcoming skills, affirming skills, and a lot of times I say it is really the Good Samaritan story. But instead of preaching and teaching it, we put actual skills to it so that they can live it in various ways.
Cool. And you've got a lovely spring cold.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you that.
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
I got my kill button here in case I start sneezing and coughing here. So
oh, it wouldn't be a first around these parts. So we'll do just fine. So, well, thanks for being together with us. I'd love for you to just give a synopsis, if you would, of what is 13 Reasons Why, and how did you catch wind of it? Not that it's
right. Yeah. So basically, and I'm guessing most people have a pretty good idea of what it is. If you haven't watched it already, I did jump in and watch it. I always tell people I don't think it's necessary that everybody watches it, but to know about it. It's the Netflix series came out March 31st and has become very quickly the most watched series that Netflix has put out. It's based on a young adult novel by Jay Asher, and it deals with some fictional characters. And Hannah Baker, ultimately her death and her suicide, and but follows Clay Jensen. What Hannah does as before her suicide is puts out 13 tapes, cassette tapes that she records, each of them talking about another person who she blames as one of the reasons that she wanted to end her life. And so it's set as kind of a kind of a mystery suspense kind of piece, and is very much, in the angst of teenage teenage world and high school and all the issues that go with that, including rape and including self-harm, including bullying. It comes up numerous times. So all kinds of things in the midst of that. So that's the synopsis of it. I'll pause and you just throw the questions at me. We'll keep going.
Well, I'd just love to know, you put out a newsletter on this recently.
Yeah.
And that you were having these conversations in your own congregation.
It was interesting with our, I get to volunteer with a group, right, on Wednesday nights, and I say our kids have, we call them candle groups. They're very much like little campfires all over the place and around a candle. The kids lead, adults just get to sit in. We're going through our, our questions that night and the topic that we were working on. We're kind of finished a little early, and suddenly this whole series thing comes up, and not all the kids had watched it yet at that point, but most had, and it was interesting. It ranged from just the fascination of it to one girl who was very concerned. She had some mental issue struggles in her own life, and just felt like this was an invitation for people to consider suicide, and was very
interesting,
very adamant about it. Junior in high school, and so she was so from there, some conversations just over the next day, and my wife works for the church. Andrea made a call to the senior pastor, Pastor Dave Olson, and Dave said, "You know what? We're gonna put something out about this," and he fairly quickly just put out an email to parents saying, "Hey, let's gather those of you that are interested and have some conversation in another week." Well, what really surprised us was almost instantly, parents were sending notes back and saying that they would be there and they're concerned about this. And I bet the first hour he had 20, 25 emails from parents, and our realization was, oh, this is a huge concern, and secondly, I think it was like, this is a huge opportunity,
sure,
to be in conversation with our parents and kids, and so yeah.
So did you lead the conversation with both parents and kids, or separately, or how did that work?
Yeah. What the church did, they orchestrated it, and had both Pastor Dave and Andrea and Pastor Aaron Werner, and I added a few things, but we first met with parents and just kind of chatted with parents and gave a resource. I think we had over 50 parents that showed up, and so it was kind of a forum on what it is, but especially on how to talk and how to questions. And Andrea put together just some really nice talk sheets for parents, and that's available. We were talking about that earlier, Danica and I, and it's probably the easiest way is just go to my Facebook page and go down several notches, and you'll see the e-news. But you can have those resource pieces, or contact me, I'll get them to you.
Yeah.
And but I think that was the biggest question was what, how do we talk to our kids? What do we say? And just having some tools alleviated a lot of just fears for parents, we found out.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive in. Let's talk about what does it mean, or how can we help kids be the leaders in having these types of conversations? I think both parents are sometimes nervous that they'll say the wrong thing, or give a kid, I hear this every now and again, that by bringing something up, they'll give them idea that they didn't already have.
Right.
And so that, they've somehow jaded their child by having the conversation. which I think, I mean, we who work with teenagers know that that's not real, but anyway, just give us some examples, some tools of.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of those myths that are out there is that, if you talk about suicide, it's going to bring it up. And even as you read around and talk with people, I don't pretend to be an expert on this series by any means, but as you read around, there are some positives. People have felt like it has given permission for lots of conversations to be brought up, and and kind of this message of, kind of underlining message of be nice to people because you never know, what they're dealing with, and right, but the negatives has been that, well, here you got this series of in these tapes, and in some ways Hannah Baker she's getting even with everybody. Everybody that's hurt her, she's found a way to get back at them. And even though she'll never know anything about it. And so, there have been people that said, wow, that's a scary message that that people can, can get back at people in their own death. And she found a way to do that. So people worry about the copycat, kind of pieces. Kids, like you say, we all work with kids. We all kind of know some of this stuff, but I'm always very humbled. When I work with groups, I will often ask them, raise hands. Just, raise hands. Tell me how many of you know somebody who, and I start going down the list. How many of you know somebody whose parents are going through, divorce, separation, their family's going through, well, every kid raises their hand, right? How many of you know somebody who is dealing with cutting or all kinds of, or just friendship issues, everybody's hand goes up. How many of you know somebody who goes through life with more depression than they should? Every hand goes up. Even junior high kids will raise their hands. But the question eventually I get to is just to say, how many of you have had a conversation with somebody who's talking to you about, thinking about suicide? And you guys, high school kids, almost always 3/4 to 100% hands go up and say, yes, we've had those conversations. I've been talking with somebody. Even early teens, though, if I ask that, at least half of the hands go up. And so I think it's one of those things where you go, oh my gosh, kids are already very involved and very knowledgeable in having the conversations. One of the criticisms I've had about peer ministry every once in a while is somebody says, well, we don't want kids talking about those issues. And I just kind of go, but they already are. Yeah. How much better to have some skills and some, and some backup to do that.
Yeah.
And so and again, I think most of us are pretty aware of that. I've been in several group conversations with kids since then, and it's interesting. There's already some kids that are like, well, I've heard enough about this. I really don't want to go back, and have to talk about this again. Mm. But then they do, and it's always profound, and it's always, just enlightening to me. I think what they find is they haven't said it all, and they haven't usually talked about it through the church yet.
Sure.
Although since I put my little e-news out, I've heard back from a number of churches that are having, meetings now with parents and kids, and just providing a platform for some conversation.
Yeah. So lay out for us, what are the best takeaways, the best things resources that you've dispensed in these group conversations of, I know it goes a lot with peer ministry practices,
right.
But how do you equip or...
Right. As I interrupt your conversation. Yeah,
How do you equip?
So I'm just so ready to talk.
How do you equip families, but ultimately kids, to have these conversations? I think sometimes, at least in my experience, kids are having these conversations, but they don't dare take the conversation to the next step, which is getting somebody who can help.
Right.
Because
Yep.
they're sworn to secrecy. Don't tell anybody but.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
give us some practical tips.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's one of my biases of peer ministry, which I obviously have. But if kids don't have these skills, then they're left to just the drama of life. I mean, if something happens to a friend or a concern, what do you do with that? Well, you talk to others about it, or you tweet about it, or text about it, and because you don't know what else to do with it, and you got to do something. So I think what we get to do is give kids caring skills. One of the things I'm most proud of, I talk about innkeepers, and I think if I were to give in the context of this, minimally, I would want to work with kids on innkeepers. It flows from the Good Samaritan story, right? And you've got the victim and you've got the Samaritan who gets the person to the innkeeper. They just get a small mention. So I'm sitting with this group of kids one time, and this girl says, she's looking at the story and she's talking about it, and she goes, the Samaritan didn't do that much. The Samaritan just got the person there. The innkeeper did all the long-term work. I mean, probably spent days, getting him back to health. And, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Absolutely right. It's like, and we kind of laughed, it's like, why doesn't get it titled the Good Innkeeper story then, And I wonder if the innkeeper felt bad about that. But I think the good news is, if I care about somebody, if I help somebody, it doesn't mean that I have to solve or fix or, make everything better. One of the best things I can do is know who my innkeepers are. Mm. And that's one of the conversations we've been having with kids. Who are the innkeepers that you trust and can turn to? Who are the people at your church? Are there people in your family? Are there trusted, neighbors or aunts or at your school? Who are the trusted innkeepers that you can go to there? And I think to help kids just name those people and to go to. And Danica, one of the things that we have learned through throughout the years is that not every adult knows what to do. And I think to state that for kids, if somebody says, and I've heard this numerous times where somebody has said, well, I talked to a parent or I talked to somebody about it, and they said, well, don't tell anybody because I don't want you to get involved any deeper. Yeah. And it's like, oh, ouch. It's like, well, who can you go to? If you hear that voice, what's the next voice you go to? And of course, some of those innkeepers, I mean, kids have to be ready to call 911 or a suicide hotline. I have all those in the e-news and stuff too. But I think equipping kids with a card or with those numbers that they know how to get to them or find them. 211 is an easy one to know. Right, we have 911, which is emergency, 411 usually information, but 211, and I'm surprised not as many people know about that, but it's a national, it's basically the first call for help that is available, and there's a text version of that also that kids can text, but at least it will give some kind of help in the beginning. We've had kids that have had to call 911 because, again, as we talk about suicide, those questions, and you want to help kids know, what do you ask? And some of the things you need to ask are just the really practicals. Have you thought about how or when or where you would do this? And if people can answer those questions, then it's very, very serious. Yeah. I also tell kids if if you're talking with somebody about suicide and, start asking some of those questions and you realize that sometimes they're just telling you the story. They're already in counseling. Their parents know about it. They're just sharing with you. And that's not a, jump on the phone and, get help immediately. But yeah, so so to give kids those kinds of just background skills, to have them tell you who they go to. By the way, kids are, the reason I say trusted adults, kids are less impressed with titles, Dr. So-and-so or the degrees that we have or those kind of things. They want to know a person that they can go to.
Yeah.
And yes, please, school counselor or whatever, but so any things that you can do to help kids at least know people's faces and personality, be, if you're working with a group, have, somebody from your congregation that does counseling with teens, family counseling, come and meet with your group so that they know them, face to face, person to person kind of things. But yeah, they're not as excited about going to, a psychologist or anything. That
Sure.
means nothing to them. They want to know Danica.
Yeah.
She's good and she'll help me figure out next steps,
Sure.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we've got some great questions coming in. I want to make sure that we are able to get those in. If you are joining us late, you can join the conversation by adding your question to the question box in your dashboard, and I'll pass them along here to Lyle. I think it might be interesting as we're waiting for people to continue sending them in. I wonder if people would also...
It's like the test.
If people would, well, two things actually. I want to go here first. For people who haven't seen the show, what exactly does it show in her suicide experience? What are the worst parts to watch?
Well,
I think people's imaginations run wild if you haven't seen it. And because it's a Netflix series, maybe not everybody has Netflix. So just give a brief...
Netflix has added more warnings on the episodes as far as who should watch, and it's certainly, mature audiences, but, it does have, I guess it's not pornographic, but it does have the rape scene. It has, it does end up in her cutting her wrists and while sitting in the bathtub, and it's graphic. What it doesn't, and people constantly, are pointing out, it doesn't deal with the mental depression part of this. It really is, for her, it was just a whole bunch of for Hannah, it was a whole bunch of circumstances of navigating, kind of navigating the world. One of the conversations here, I gotta share this. One of the conversations, I was in one of our candle groups one night, kids got talking about just navigating high school, and I had to write it down because it was so profound. He said so many kids at our school are like magnets. They're drawn to drama, quickly joining in, echoing judgments, passing on gossip, and forming negative opinions. As high school students, we constantly walk this line of making choices that won't make us stand out too much, because if you stand out, you quickly attract critics. And I thought, wow, I've read that to a number of groups, and people get talking about it, and it was just like, wow. And that was kind of Hannah's experience, I think, was she found herself to be a target of rumors and those kind of things. Huh. Give me a question, Danica.
Yeah, Justin's wondering, should middle schoolers see it?
I think a lot have already, and I think, the wisdom that we said is watch it with a parent. In some ways, it's nothing unusual than what they've already seen, although the storyline is pretty graphic, but you want to be able to talk to somebody about it. It's not, I wouldn't suggest it as, hey, let's make this a youth group event. I leave that to parents.
Yeah.
And
Good idea. There's very strong opinions that no. middle schoolers. It's mature audience. So
Yep.
not a church function.
Yep. Now my niece watched it with her mom,
Hmm.
and she's a middle schooler, and and so they talked about it and those kind of things. I don't know. I don't want to completely judge the show as right or wrong, but I certainly would say anybody, and I think one of the articles that's out there said if anybody is struggling, already with self-image and kind of the multiple issues that lead up to suicide, this is just candy to them.
Hmm.
And so yeah, be careful with it, and best advice is make it a family. If you're going to watch it with parents.
Yeah. Christina says she just finished watching the series, and she doesn't think the word glamorize is a proper term. She felt like it was raw. How do you describe the nature of the series? I think this gets a little bit to what you...
I like your term, raw. Yeah, and yeah, people have been using the word glamorize, but I think that's a good word. A good way to put it is it's just kind of raw, and it's Hannah goes through so many different things. None of them new. None of this is new, right? I mean, this is stuff that's going on. But of course, they all happen to her in a short period of the series, and so it's kind of a lot to take in. But every one of the episodes has some conversation things.
Yeah.
So.
Tracy says one thing that her youth told her at their group last week when they were discussing this was that they felt like the adults were actually portrayed accurately. They were kind of concerned, but no follow-through.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, one of the conversations, we had at our conference a few weeks ago, and they had a session on suicide, and there was conversations, but one of the groups of kids said, yeah, I wouldn't, I don't trust adults with this. I wouldn't, which was sad to hear. And, but they're kind of an edgy group of this particular group, kind of an edgy group of kids. But they, in other words, they were saying, I don't have adults that I would trust to go to, and that's scary. So I think that's where teaching a little bit about the innkeeper is really, really important, and giving them some tools to do that. I don't know. It's the adults portrayed. Yeah, there's somewhat some things on there. The school counselor. No, and I've talked with counselors about this, and they said no. If they heard the things that Hannah was saying, they would not have just let her walk out the door. There would have been other approaches, and so yeah, there's some things that are, adults are they're kind of caring, but ignorant all the way through. So yeah.
All right. Samantha says, or is wondering, how did you suggest tying the church into the issues of suicide, rape, self-image, and judgment, especially since there's Christian stigma on suicide?
Yeah. Thank you. I suppose it goes back to the grief and loss stuff, and one of the things I always tell people, and this is kind of a depressing way to talk about, but everything, absolutely everything that we know comes to an end. People, buildings, organizations, countries, everything except for what the church embodies, and that's the hope, the grace, the love, the peace of our faith. That's it. And when I start, I start being amazed at what we have to offer. So that's important. I did hear one of my kids at the church the other day said, "Oh, my friend had a friend that had committed suicide. My mom said she's going to hell," and I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to disagree with your mom on this one. That's not the case." And so we had to have that conversation. So there are those myths, even out of good Lutheran parents.
Yeah.
So.
Well, how quickly our time goes
I know,
in this kind of discussion. Thank you to everybody who who's joined the conversation. Lyle's contact information is at the end in case we didn't get to your question, or if you are still formulating what you'd like to ask. I want to say once again that the resources that that Lyle was talking about, the e-news that he sent out about it, is on his Pure Ministry Facebook page.
Actually, it's under my name, Lyle Griner.
It's on your Lyle page. All right.
Yep.
So they can find that there, and there's lots of comments. Thank you coming in. Attending a youth mental health first aid clinic, if you haven't.
Yeah.
It's a great,
good.
Great suggestion.
Yeah,
so
it's worth getting in. Yeah, make yourself a resource for these things because they're out. It's definitely part of the world. Yeah, please shoot me a note or whatever. I'd love to hear what you're doing. And just because I'm trying to be a resource for other churches. And so if you have things that you're doing or resourcing with, please, I'd love to keep a little collection of those.
Absolutely. Just a few housekeeping things as we wrap up. Third Tuesday conversations are all archived, so for those of you who are asking, they will be available for viewing later on. Go to elcaymnet.org/3tc archive, and you can listen to this again there. We've got lots of titles. This is our last one for the school year of 2017. We'll pick it up again this fall. We hope that you have a blessed summer doing all the things that you'll do with teenagers and families in playing and praying and doing justice work all over. So thanks for the work that each of you does in the place that you find yourself, and we're grateful that we can be together as a network in this way. We look forward to picking up where we left off in September. Thanks, and have an awesome day.
Thanks, Annika. Blessings.